Discover the best-kept secrets from the leading entrepreneurs across the globe. Learn from the greatest minds in business with the MyCoda podcast. Here's your host, Sam Payne.
Hello and welcome to another session of the MyCoda podcast. Now, today's guest is Chris Brogan. And for the guys out there that don't know Chris or not familiar with his work, he's an author, a speaker, he's CEO of Owner Media Group, and he's just the guru when it comes to how to run a business, how to set up a business, how to make money. And Chris is all about helping people. I mean, he has got so many resources out there on just how to make your wins, as he calls it. He helps people win and get their scores up on the board. And it was such an enjoyable interview today. Chris he is possibly one of the coolest guys I've interviewed so far, and it was thoroughly enjoyable to have him on the show. So before we start, Chris, just thank you for giving up some of your time for us today, because I think, guys, you're going to get so much from this interview. Now, I would recommend 100%, if you haven't done so already, checking out Chris after you listen to this interview, because if you're struggling so far in setting up your business, if you aren't quite getting where you want to be, then Chris really is the guy that can help you do that. So I'm going to leave the intro here, guys. Get your notepads and pens out, because this one is an absolute winner. This is the MyCoda podcast with Chris Brogan. Good afternoon, Chris. How are we doing today?
I'm the best I've ever been. How are you?
That's good to hear, man. And just before we kick things off, for the guys out there that may not be familiar with you, could you just please introduce yourself and what it is you do?
Sure. I'm a business advisor and an author and a keynote speaker. I run a company called Owner Media. What I've done over time is I have worked with some of the largest brands in the world, companies, like Google, Microsoft, Coke, Pepsi, those kinds of guys. But I also now work a lot with one-on-one with small business owners and the like. And what I do is very simple. I help people put more wins on their board, which is usually through things like courses, webinars, speeches, that sort of a thing. And really try to work on really actionable things that people can do to improve their business. So that could be anything from how to build an online course, how to earn more customers, how to figure out how to make a podcast. So we do all kinds of things to help figure out what people need to be human at a distance in this new world.
That's awesome. And we're going to cover that stuff later on in the interview. But before we get going, the theme of this podcast is all about business startups. So can you take us back to when you started out? What change took place in you that made you decide to become an entrepreneur and start your own business?
So I've heard people say that there are two types of entrepreneurs, the kind that started when they were age 5 or the like, and then there were the others who, kind of fell into it by mistake. I'm definitely in the mistake category.
Okay.
My experience was I was an employee a good lot of my life, and I was not that kid selling, his brother's comic books. I was not that kid, always trying to find the angle to make a few extra bucks. I was, I just fell into this, and partly it started in the 90s, although I didn't really run my own company until, 2008 or so. But what happened was I was working at this company, and I was reading all these books and articles by this guy, Tom Peters, really super smart, exciting guy. And he just kept driving me to want more from the company. And when I realized that I didn't actually get a steering wheel at my company, and when I realized that, I was just a guy at a desk and I could be the CEO of my desk, and I learned how to do that, it really just started to feel limiting. And so in September 2006, I started an event called PodCamp with this guy, Christopher Penn. On the second day of it, we'd very cheekily invited a millionaire to come to the event who ran this really cool event called Vaughn, which is about voice on the net and also something called video on the net. And he hired me at that event on the second day. He said, come work for me. Come run my video on the net conference with me. I said, okay. And that's it. And so that was sort of my first nearly entrepreneurial thing, although I was still just an employee. Yeah. But a year or so after that, I launched my own company, the first one, which was Human Business Works. And in that process, I just started learning a lot about how to put together, what I wanted a business to be like. And so that's what kind of entrepreneur I am. I'm not the type that seems to figure out if I have a web page, I think I'm an entrepreneur. I'm more or less the kind that said, oh, I'm making money, I guess I'll run my own company.
Yeah. And the first company you set up there, you said it was called Human...
The first was Human Business Works.
Human Business Works. I mean, did you make much money with that company, or was that more of a learning tool for you to leverage you onto your more profitable businesses?
No, I probably made more money with Human Business Works than Owner Media Group. The part of it was just sort of luck and timing. Part of it was that, just the opportunities that were in front of me in 2009, 10, and 11 were just so vast. It was just, there was like a spigot pouring bills out of it saying, here's some money. And then that dried up for a few different reasons starting around 2011. And I've worked ever since to hit some of the numbers that I hit at Human Business Works. The name of the company I thought was so perfect. I was like, it just sums up everything I wanted to do. I wanted to teach people how to be human at a distance, putting a lot more humanity into our business. It works. And I left the name Works because I've never been an ephemeral kind of person. I'm very grounded in, wanting to teach people very actionable, direct, easy things to do. Yeah. But people just didn't grab it. So I renamed my company Owner Media Group, partly so I could use the initials OMG.
I love that.
We also have something called the Owners Mastery Foundation Group, so we could have OMFG. And so what we did in that process, what I did was I translated my business from being more of a consultancy into doing more courses and webinar type work. And that was partly to get off the road. And that was partly to really align myself so that instead of just consulting with really big companies, I had this weird dichotomy. So the people paying attention to me were people like you who are, running a somewhat smaller business, let's say. But the people who were paying me were like Coke and Pepsi and those kinds of companies. And so I love working with big companies, but the community that I had amassed around me that I had the opportunity to serve were a bunch of people who couldn't really relate and most definitely couldn't pay what Coke and Pepsi pay. And boy, do I love big, giant paychecks, but I also love helping people do really cool things. And so Owner Media Group runs at a smaller size and whatnot, and we've yet to kind of get the numbers just right, so that I can say, man, I'm just rolling in bills. Yeah. But the business is, profitable. It pays for 3 humans to work and operate and the families of those humans to have a life. And it allows me to play a lot of Xbox. So I'm pretty happy, Sam.
That's awesome. And you said there that you work with both large corporations and entrepreneurs starting their own small businesses. In what you teach to these companies, are there any similarities in your approaches, or do you teach things completely different to the corporations that you do to the guys that are just starting out?
Well, so the one real difference, Sam, is that there are so many more people in these companies. For instance, when I showed up at Microsoft, the group that I was hanging out with, like the people who put out the cream cheese at the meeting, there were more people in that staff than there were in my company.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm just thinking, okay, now what do you do? But I've always had the benefit of thinking that even big companies should operate like small companies, and having the benefit of having worked at some big companies. I worked for the phone company a long time ago before I, had this. So I've worked in big corporations and mid-sized companies. And then I worked as a vendor to a lot of corporations. And so that was cool because I learned how those people want to buy and how they interact and what goes into the decision-making tree and all that. And so I was able to speak their language very well, but tell my story, which was we should be a lot more human. Yeah. So oddly, this is a really long answer to what should be a simple question, but oddly, Sam, what I was trying to do was I was telling big companies, here's how you could act a bit more like an entrepreneur, but I had to give them all the little tiny steps that all their little departments would have to do. Yeah. Because in my head, for instance, I'll give you one easy example. I think that customer service departments should be tied a lot closer to marketing and sales departments. Because let's say that you buy, I'm looking at my crap at my table here to see, okay, you buy a nice new headphones and you're like, oh, these are really good headphones, and then they don't work. Well, it doesn't matter how many times the salesperson wants to tell me how great the headphones are. If they broke and I can't get them to run with my system, I'm mad. So I call customer service, and that person has to restore me as a customer. Yeah. So in my wireless company, we called it sell the dream and implement the nightmare. Right. So the salesperson could be like, this is a great product and it's going to give you great hearing and you're going to hear the bad guy creeping up and you're going to win, in video games or whatever. And then the customer service guy goes, yeah, but it doesn't work on Xbox. There's this known bug or something. My parents bought like the first Toyota Prius in New Hampshire. And when they brought it in for something like the 7th service call, the guy in the garage said, oh, yeah, they're not really made to run in New Hampshire. It's too cold there. And they're like, well, why did they sell it at the dealership? And the guy goes, I don't know. Right. So did that endear my parents to, that company? Yes and no. They moved to Las Vegas and now the car works fine. But you see where I'm getting at? So that's what I've taught big companies. And I think that what entrepreneurs need to learn, the same as big companies, is that it's always about the people you serve. It's never about yourself. And a lot of entrepreneurs get out there and get a little weird because they're trying to think of ways that they can sustain themselves, which is never a great way to make a whole lot of money. The best way to make money is the old Zig Ziglar quote, help enough people get what they need and you can have what you want.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, you touched on you're selling a lot more courses now. I mean, a lot of people are going down this route, and just look at Udemy, for example. It is inundated with courses. So how can someone create an online course and make sure it stands out from the crowd? What can they do to really jump off the screen and make people want to invest in them?
Well, as a guy that owns onlinecoursemaker.com, Sam, that's a great question. I'll tell you.
I'll put that in the show notes. Don't panic. It's there.
My gosh, you've just sold it for me. So I stumbled into it in a really weird way. So I was doing a lot of webinars, and our webinars, by the way, are different than any other webinars you ever see out there. We charge people. We charge $20 for a webinar. So first off, we have a saying around our way called $20 is the new free. We use that to vet people. You also, it's funny because people say, well, why would I go to a paid webinar if I could go to a free one? And I said, that makes about as much sense as nothing, because you're thinking that the value is in whether or not it's free. And I'm saying that if I charge you $20, I'm going to have to deliver at least $20 worth of value to you, right? Like it's not free money. So we promise six times the value. So at least $120 worth of value. I made that number up, but who knows? But I can guarantee it because the few people that ask for their money back, they're just not Chris Brogan people. They're other people. So in the process of this, how we did an online course and how to stand out, we have come up with a system and a way of getting your idea into a full-on course that basically is a lot more lightweight. It's a lot less fluffy than some of the other folks who do what they do. A lot of people run out and they hire really good production video guys, and they spend thousands and thousands of dollars. It's fine, by the way. You could do that. I'm not saying don't do it. But really, it goes back to the same answer I just gave you for the last question. It really has to be in service of people. So I made a really simple online jumpstart type course called Start Podcasting. And guess what happens when you're done? You can have a podcast. Yeah. The steps from start to finish, you can launch one, right? And so a lot of other people's courses seem to be these weird ephemeral things that you're like, if you pray to the right gods and if you bury the, fetus under the right tree, maybe the money fairy will visit you. Yeah. And I just can't sell that. So one way to stand out is to make a course around an absolute deliverable. Yeah. And if you don't have, again, young entrepreneurs, and by young, you could be 100 years old, I don't care, but I mean new to this idea, people aren't dying to buy your course. People are trying to solve their problem. Yeah. And so everything that I built, listen to how my courses are named. Online Course Maker. Oh, what do you get when you're done? Courses. Earn more customers. Oh, I have more customers when I'm done. Start podcasting, right? So all of them are built like to punch you in the eye and say, here's what you get when you're done. Yeah. A lot of other people's courses are like, surf the right wave and go the distance. Well, pretty much zero people have a surf the right wave and go the distance problem. Right? There's no one going to the web going, man, Sam, I've been surfing the wrong waves lately. I don't know what's going on.
I'm not going the distance. I mean, come on.
I've been only going a short distance. I guess I'm not getting it. I got to get the right program. No, you just rent Point Break. I mean, that's how you get through that problem.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about delivering a lot of value, I mean, you've got 8 books on the market already published with one on the way. I mean, could you tell us a little bit more about your new book that's coming out?
I could, but, I have to tell you this. Every time I tell somebody about it, I end up deciding not to write that book. So I'll tell you, my next one, the idea is make your own game. And so in trust agents, the very first step of being a trust agent is the book I came out with in 2009 with Julian Smith, was make your own game. And the idea was sort of design your own category, build your own version of how you're going to connect with people, blah, blah, blah. And so make your own game was this idea that I wanted to push forward into how can you align your business in your life to do the business the way you want to do it, whether or not you're just an employee somewhere. Like when I tell people they could be an owner, I mean that they can still be at their own desk at a cubicle somewhere. It's fine. I sure was for lots of years, but I ran my company, like the part of my business where I was an employee. I ran it different than any other guy who had the same title as me. And so I think that there's something to it. So the idea is make your own game. Before that book comes out, I might be producing a direct to Amazon type of book which is tentatively titled Snap. I have it open in another window here. And the idea behind Snap is that it's basically how to write and communicate better online in blogs, webs, emails, newsletters, etc. Because it turns out there's kind of like a different way to communicate. And I thought it was kind of natural for people, and it turns out it's not. There's a group of young Turks coming up who don't seem to understand what punctuation means, and then there's a group of old people who still write as if we have 55 years to read a newsletter or something. Yeah. So I'm trying to help them understand the new world, which ironically enough, given how long I take to answer your question, Sam, it's about brevity.
Yeah, they both sound like awesome books, to be fair. And one thing that's obvious is you're very good at highlighting problems and addressing them. So, I mean, how can you advise guys out there who are struggling to find problems within their niches to find those problems and then go after these people and present the solution?
You know, I mean, with struggling, one of the things I'm always amazed at entrepreneurs try to do is they go to these events where they meet other entrepreneurs. So what are you going to learn from them? You're going to learn everything that those guys aren't doing well. Like, by the way, that I have a sort of derogatory opinion of entrepreneur meetups because essentially you're just going to a room full of people who haven't figured it out, right? Like that room is chock full of people just like you who are still, in a holding pattern. If you're using it to get a lot smarter, that's great. But if you're using it to have beers and say, man, is it hard to be an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. That's not making you any more money. Like you're no richer when you leave that room. Yeah. So go where the people are that are having the problem. Start having coffee with people. Start asking them questions like, what really are you working on? Where did you invest any of your money? See, here's a really good question to ask people. What did you invest in this year? Where did any dollars come out of your pocket? What credit card swipe happened when you said, I want to figure this out? Because I'll tell you, a lot of people tell you what they think they're working on or what they think their problems are. But when money comes out of a pocket, that's what they're working on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would do. Start figuring out that. You could invite, you could have several 10-minute coffees. Let's say you could do 4 an hour because you need time for people to get up and get off and you have to pee. You could learn more in those 4 10-minute meetings than you could ever at any entrepreneur meetup where people say how hard it is to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
By inviting the right people. My old boss, Jeff Pulver, taught me that. He was the guy who he co-founded Vonage way back in the day. And so the problem he solved was voice over IP, good phone conversations, back when nobody was using voice over IP in the telco land. And he would have these meetings where he would just ask people just that simple question. What's going on in your life? What are you working on? What's bugging you? And someone would say, voice quality of calls are bad. Oh, you work on that. And whatever the challenge was, he would just listen to them and think about whether or not he wanted to launch a business around it. And I think that you're going to learn a lot more about that than you are going to, absorb 10 new podcasts a week.
Yeah. Again, that more awesome advice there. I mean, and another one of your books which really stood out to me was your Google Plus for Business books. And I mean, you're really one of the only influencers I've really heard rave about Google Plus over any of the other platforms. So, I mean, what is it about Google Plus? I mean, why should people be using it?
I don't think they should anymore.
Okay, wow.
Not a way to wreck your segment, Sam.
Yeah.
But, well, let me tell you the genesis of that, and then why it fell down the hill. That was so great. Could have planned this. So I know you're divorced, Chris. How did that go?
Yeah, I've still got. I'm not going to cut this out. This is staying in there.
Yeah, leave it in, baby.
Oh, it's in. It's in.
All right. So. All right. I was a very early adopter of Google Plus, even more so than Twitter. So Twitter, I was user 10,202. And I'm proud of that, or 10,212 or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is magical. And back then it was. And Twitter's kind of dead to me too, but we'll get there later. Google Plus, I was like, oh my gosh, look at all the things you could do. And this is run by the second biggest, the first and second biggest search engine in the world. Google and YouTube are the first and second biggest search engine. This is the backbone that they're going to put all of their other stuff on. And they did. Google replaced comments with Google Plus comments, right? Yeah. On YouTube and stuff like that. They did all kinds of stuff to say, now this is where it's going. And they hired all kinds of people, and they had a big shindig, and I got invited to meet with some of those people. And I was like, woo, this is great. And so I had invested hours in this thing. I did a paid webinar, like a few weeks into it just to tell people what they could learn from it. And oh my God, the internet wrote me so much hate mail. Chris Brogan's charging us to teach us about Google Plus. I was like, it's so cool. If I knew how to steal money out of your wallet, I would. But you have to actually pay if you want to come to it. So you just don't come, and you'll save $20. Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was so great. I wrote this whole book. And by the way, tell you something about that book. That book stands as long as you don't pay any attention to anything to do with the actual software Google Plus. Everything I write in the book applies to all technical platforms. Period. That's the secret trick of the book I wrote, is that it's just about business. But Google internally decided, I don't know. And then they started letting people go from that group. They started repurposing all those people. They fired a crap ton of people. And they just stopped betting on it. And Google's done this multitudes of times already. They bought Jaiku. They destroyed it. They bought Bebo, I think it was. It was huge everywhere but the U.S. They destroyed it. They've just left a wake of burning husks where there used to be social platforms. And it is really at the core of it. I've been to Google headquarters a few different times for different things. They're nice people, but there is not a social bone in their body. And I mean that not like social media, but like there's not – those people want to work on software, and the answer is always software. Yeah. Whereas Facebook is like that frat party that they talk about. And I am not – I use Facebook a lot. I still don't think it's the best business tool in the whole wide world. I still think Google Plus would have been the right platform for that. But I failed us, Sam. I failed us all. But they paid me a nice check for that book. I took a lot of money for that book. So I still get a statement, by the way, every month that says you still haven't paid back the royalties on that. Like every single month, it basically says, so you only sold like 8 or 9 copies. Don't worry, you still don't owe us. Like they technically could demand the money back that I got for that book because it never made that much money.
Well, let's talk about a platform that was a little bit more successful for you. I mean, you were, like you just said, you was one of the more early adopters of Twitter. And actually, I loved your interview you had with Gary Vaynerchuk about this. But at what point did you realise that Twitter was the place to be? I mean, did you realise it when you first got onto that platform, or did it take a while for you to really start utilising it?
Oh, no. Like day one, I was like, this is cool. And so there's a lot of weird things that I feel like an old man on the lawn, back in my day. But back in the original, the @ thing wasn't a thing. My friend Chris Messina invented hashtags. Chris invented, he founded Barcamp with Tara Hunt way back in the day. Really smart guys, worked at a lot of really big and wonderful companies. He invented hashtags because there was no way to search anything. And so he just said, well, let's just put a pound in front of whatever we want to search for. Now hashtags is like an industry. Like I've seen people who have like hashtag such and such on their resume, which by the way, don't ever do that. Take the words hashtag out of your CV. But that was because of something called folksonomy that existed in what we used to call Web 2.0 back in 2005. So, yes, sir, I am. And so the answer to, what I saw on Twitter was it was really fast-paced news that we wanted. And we all used it sort of like a live, real-time Bloomberg news service, right? Yeah. So some people were sort of automating their tweets a little bit. Some people were, kind of spamming that, but you could just choose not to follow them, and life was okay. Yeah. Now, it feels like it's I think it's I'm trying to think of the guy's name, a Yogi Berra quote. The place is so popular, no one goes there anymore. Yeah. But it's kind of true, right? So I have 345,000 followers according to Twitter. That's what that typing sound was earlier in the question. 345,000 followers. That's, a very large city for the most part of Twitter followers. If I post something, I might get as many as 14 clicks. Okay. My newsletter is 36,000 people. If I post something with a link there, I might get 18,000 clicks. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So percentage wise, that just tells you there's actually no point for me to be on Twitter. Business wise, there's no point to be there. The actual only reason I still keep some kind of a presence is that, I don't know, it impresses people that there's that many people following me. And second, that really weird famous people follow me there for reasons I don't exactly know. Yeah. Boy George, for instance.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird famous one, definitely. And well, moving on to more current up-and-coming platforms, are there any that are being released at the minute which you think people should keep their eyes on or start utilising for their business?
Sam, I'm horrible at this question. I hate Snapchat. I can tell you the ones I hate. I hate Snapchat. I hate Periscope. I think that they're getting towards something. They have, like, there's a reason why people are into it. But, one of the reasons I hate Snapchat is that I can't do what the media companies can do. I'm mad that I can't do that thing that, like, Vice or MTV or whatever allows them, the little cool music and the dancing and the swipe up and then I'll show you the story. If I could do that, I'd probably like it. But, I don't know. When I first ever heard of Snapchat, I was told it was a place to get pictures of boobs. And, I already have a fiance. I know what her boobs look like. They're good. But I can see them in person most days. Yeah. So I don't need Snapchat. But there's so many people suddenly saying you need a Snapchat strategy. And I'm scared because when I said all this about Twitter, I never said you need a Twitter strategy. I just said it's a pretty good tool. You should probably be there. I'm nervous that, I started saying that in 2006. It wasn't until 2009 that people started believing me. I'm nervous that I'm now that guy on the other side of this equation, that everyone's saying Snapchat, and I'm going, this is horrible.
Yeah.
I'm nervous that I'm wrong. However, my last several curmudgeonly moments where I've said this platform is stupid, I was right. The only one I got horribly wrong was Google+. And it was, again, because Google just decided to stop investing in it, and I couldn't have foreseen that.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't know what the next platform is, but I know a few things. It has to be mobile first. That's what Snapchat teaches us. That's what Periscope teaches us. That's what all these new apps that we're hearing about. I'm using this app called List. It's li.st. And all it is people publishing lists of things. So Anthony Bourdain, the famous cook guy who has all those shows about traveling and eating other people's food, he might have a list like, sequels that were better than the first movie. And it's kind of entertaining, but I don't know how you're going to make money off it.
Yeah.
But I think that as an entrepreneur, my favorite social platform, my favorite media platform is still email. And I think it is alive and kicking. And that 78% of my revenue comes from email. So that's my favorite platform.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, but did you find having such a large social media presence has helped contribute to that email list?
It didn't hurt back in the day. My blog was much more reason why. I had a very successful blog. I have a successful blog, but it's not what it used to be. 200,000 or so uniques a day is not, bad. Is it a day or a month? I might be lying to you. It might be a month. But anyway, people come to my site. And either way, it's not what it used to be. And what I can tell you is that you need some kind of presence somewhere. You need some kind of home base. I always tell people you should have a blog no matter what. And even if it's not a blog, like even if it's not like, today I went out and I bought a sandwich, it's great to have a site that you can control and a presence that you control. And I do not want people to put it on other people's platforms. Don't put it on Medium. Don't put it on Facebook, because they'll kick you out for no particularly good reason. There's a lot of those platforms that just vanish one day or decide you're not allowed to play there anymore. Yeah. It's like renting a hotel room and putting a Led Zeppelin poster on the wall and thinking it's your room. Yeah. It's just not.
Well, and I mean, I love your blog as well, by the way. I think it's awesome. And I loved your post on Pokemon Go. I think, again, you're one of the first guys I've seen write anything about Pokemon Go. Do you feel businesses can use this at all to leverage anything towards their companies or not?
Well, I think there are some ways. I've seen some really immediate things go on with that. For instance, technology stores like Best Buy have little Pokemon Go tables where they put out battery packs and other things like that you can add to your phone. I can tell you that most mobile stores, at least here in the States, are doing a lot of selling based on that. And they have little Pokemon graphics, the little, red and white ball next to the phones that you can use to play this game. Like, it is driving phone sales. Yeah. It will fade. I mean, people are like, oh, it's going to fade, And I'm like, yeah, everything fades, dummy. But that doesn't, this goes back to riding the wave, right? If you see the really big wave go by, you don't go, oh, well, that's it. You get on that wave if you can. Absolutely. I don't know that it'll have any kind of lasting value, but I can tell you that I can tell you that for people to ignore it is silly, because there's things to learn that aren't about the game. It's not about catching little monsters or whatever. It's about watching thousands of people at a time swarm places. It's about watching people start to pay attention to geography and what could come of it. I mean, this is what we said was going to happen with all those location-based apps. Foursquare said this is what we were going to do, and no one did. this suddenly has more user base than dating apps like Tinder. It's surpassed Twitter. It's the number one mobile app ever sold at this point. So, I mean, you can't just ignore it and say, oh, it's just a kid's game. I mean, you can, but I think that makes you not much of an entrepreneur, because you're missing the idea to start thinking about trends and why did it happen and what else could we do that would make it useful.
Yes. And, we've got, we're running a little bit short of time now, so we've got a couple more questions before we wrap it up. One thing really shocked me actually was the fact that you manage your own social accounts, you answer all your own emails personally. So what do you feel the value that you're adding there is over using, say, automation tools like Edgar or Buffer or anything like that?
So I love this question. So Richard Branson answers his own emails. So Richard Branson tweets his own tweets. Every now and again he hands the phone to somebody else, but he's doing a lot of his own work. And I think that a man who owns over 400 companies and is planning to build a hotel on the moon, I think, if he can be a present, then I think you and I and the average slub can be on there. When we use social tools to connect to people, we don't want to connect to their person. We don't want to connect to their handler. I told you weird people follow me on Twitter. I tweeted Vanilla Ice telling him about going to see his concert when he started doing this music that was a little more heavy metal. And I got back an emoji of a thumbs up. Now, I'm pretty sure Vanilla Ice did not thumbs up me. Yeah. And I'm sad because I'm like, wow, man, here I am taking a minute to tell you something personable. And here you are, a guy that a lot of people would malign and make fun of. And I'm saying something nice to you. I think that's an ideal time for you to be a human being and connect. And I think that would go a long way towards building that feeling that we get when we feel seen and noticed, right? Humankind's greatest need is the need to feel wanted. So anyone who says, I think I'll push away all of my tools to automation, it's not you can't automate. You've got to use automation in a very human way. That's our big quote at Owner Media Group. We say to automate is human. So what we do is we use automation in a lot of ways to earn human interaction. We'll send out an automated email that says, hey, I noticed you were looking at this course. I noticed you also didn't decide to buy it. Did I miss something? Is there something I can answer? And when they hit reply, it goes to me. Everything goes to me or Rob, and we talk to the people that are saying they have a problem. That's different than sending robot emails saying, you missed your chance. Click this to get this thing. I think that's where everyone gets it wrong. I think the moment we get to be more human is where most people are throwing it away, and that's how I win.
And that's an awesome answer. And it's almost like you're using automation to would it be right to say qualify people to get to your inbox, so people that are paying an interest in you, or would you say that's an unfair thing to say?
Oh, I give everyone access to my inbox. Send me an email right now, chris@owner.media. I'll write you back. It doesn't matter. I'm amazed how many people have someone to try to vet all of that. I mean, it doesn't take that long to answer. I get between 400 and 600 emails every Sunday when my newsletter comes out. Yeah. And if you give 1 minute for 1 minute response to every single one of 600, that's actually 10 hours of time. So that is a lot of time. But who wouldn't want that problem? These entrepreneurs who say, I can't find any customers. I had 600 human contacts, which is 600 potential sales. Yeah. Why wouldn't I have those conversations? What am I doing that's more important than reaching 600 people directly?
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. It really is. And we're going to have to wrap it up here, Chris. So I'm going to ask you one question that I love to ask everybody on this show is, if you had to give someone one piece of advice who's just starting out today, what would it be and why?
I'm terrified that someday someone will make a clip of how many times I've answered the exact same thing. It's easy. Be helpful. Be helpful is my answer. And it is so simple sounding, and it is what so few people do. Be helpful, right? I mean, one of my friendships was with this really great guy named Mark Horvath. He runs a company called InvisiblePeople.tv, which helps homeless people get a voice and a vision in the world. So you could see homeless people and actually understand the people behind the stories. And Mark and I met in a hallway after I had seen him speak at this really fun event. And I gave him a pair of Crocs that I had just been given, those shoes, those awful shoes. Yeah. I gave him a pair that I'd just been given at the event off my feet because I said, I feel kind of dumb wearing these, seeing that you go out and give shoes and socks to homeless people. Why don't you give these to some homeless guy? And I guess the sight of me barefoot in the hallway really filled him with tears, and he thought, oh my God. And I said, this is such a dumb story to make you think I'm such a great guy. Someone just gave me these shoes. I'm taking off 5-minute-old shoes and giving them to you. Mine are still in the backpack. But he said he was moved because I was helpful and I chose to be helpful. And that started a friendship. We started in '08. So my point, to make that story so long, and I know you're going to wrap up, is that helpful is the most important thing we can ever be, because it makes everyone feel better and it makes them feel like we're going to be there to solve their business challenge.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a simple concept, and it's something that a lot of people don't really do. So yeah, I 100% agree. I think that's awesome. And unfortunately, Chris, I mean, that's all we've got time for today. So, I mean, thank you so much for coming on and giving us some of your time. That was a great interview. And I'm not going to cut out the part with Google. I'm going to leave that in there for listeners.
That's the best.
Yeah, that's there. But once again, thank you for coming on today, mate. Really appreciate your time.
This was a great interview, Sam. Thank you so much for it.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers, Chris.
Okay, and we'll finish it up there, guys. So, Chris, once again, thank you for coming onto the show today. And, guys, if you haven't done so already, I would thoroughly recommend getting in touch with Chris. He is such an open guy. He's so willing to help people. It is unreal. So, if there's anyone that we've interviewed so far that's going to help you as much as they can, or as much as you deserve to be helped, it is Chris. I mean, and hit him up with the contact details I've put in the show notes below, and he will do you wonders, okay? So, again, Chris, thank you so much for coming on and just delivering a ton of value there for everyone listening to the show. Now, guys, as we've stated before, we want to get into the new and noteworthy section on the iTunes podcast, and it's with all your support and help that we can do that. And if you are enjoying our shows, if you have already subscribed to our show, if you've already rated and reviewed, if you've already left a rating and review for our show, then thank you so much. You guys just spreading the word, telling everybody else how much this is helping you, is giving us so many more downloads, and it's going to get us so much higher on that new and noteworthy section. So thank you again for all your support so far. And if you haven't done so already, guys, then please, if you could just get onto the iTunes library where we've got the MyCoda podcast. The link is in the show notes below. And if you could just subscribe, rate and review to the show, that will help us so much in getting into that new and noteworthy section. And that is it, guys. I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you so much for tuning in and giving us an hour of your time. And I'll see you next time for the MyCoda podcast.